Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at two very important stories. The first is with reference to the local body's elections in Sindh, in which the candidates of the Pakistan People's Party have been trading ahead according to unconfirmed and unofficial election results. We also know that unfortunately there have been various incidents of violence as well at different polling stations, along with complaints of missing ballot papers, change of the election symbols and belated start of the polling. These were the issues that we have seen in the local body's polls. But we're going to be taking a closer look at what has happened with regards to the elections and of course the issues of violence at different polling stations, and how moving forward when we go towards the general elections these issues can actually be avoided and what really is the reason for them to actually occur, and then of course the consequences of this on the overall election result, and what is going to be the measures taken in the aftermath of such incidents as well. We'll also be taking a look at the larger context in which we're living in the kind of intolerance that exists in the society, particularly with reference to political opinions, and how that sort of polarization can also be dealt with prior to the general elections. That's going to be our focus of the first segment of the show today. In our second segment, we will take a look at the issue of the Ukrainian war and what is going on with regards to the Russian military expansion within Ukraine, something that has been going on for very long now and that we've talked about repeatedly as well. We've seen in a recent development that after a span of time, there have been attacks on Kiev once again, and a local apartment building and also a kindergarten were also among the properties damaged. We have at least one person reported killed and 6 others, including a 7-year-old girl who was rescued from underneath a rubble. So we're going to be taking a look at this crisis and try to understand what is going to be the trajectory that it's going to take in the coming days and months, and how the evolving situation is going to impact the global food and energy crisis, of which we are also somebody who's going to get affected. So that is going to be our focus of the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, I've been joined in the studios by Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. And for our first segment regarding local body elections in Sindh, I've been joined by Mr. Kadeem, who's the chairperson FAFIN, and we've also been joined by Mr. Nader Kabul, leader PPP. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us today and being a part of the show. I'll start with you, Mr. Nader. When we look at what is going on and the kind of unconfirmed and unofficial results that have been coming in with regards to the People's Party being ahead of the other candidates, that of course is something that is a cause of celebration for the PPP. But then there is of course also reports coming in from various parts of Sindh with regards to issues in polling stations. Some of them have also been violent, but more meaningfully, what is going on in terms of the balloting papers or issues with election symbols, something which can actually have an impact on the election process or the results, is more worrisome. What do you think about those incidents, and if there is any truth to them, what is going to be the way they're going to be taken ahead by the PPP and the government?
For having me on the show. Yes, we are celebrating because the people of Sindh have shown their confidence in the leadership of Pakistan People's Party by a thumping majority. We won by a big margin. No other party came even remotely close to the results that we were able to achieve. There were incidents of violence, but overall it was mostly peaceful, and hats off to the law enforcement agencies that they maintained peace overall. Some incidents were reported, and action will be taken against those people who created a law and order situation or created a hindrance in the electoral process. And as far as the ballot papers are concerned, yes, we did also receive some report from our own polling agents that some symbols were incorrectly printed, and I think Election Commission of Pakistan is the proper authority to deal with such complaints. And
right.
They should.
Gabol Sahab, you earlier said that elections took place mostly largely peaceful environment, and then you also spoke about how fair the elections were. Most of the opposition parties in Sindh, right from GDA to MKM, who are actually one of them, at least few of them are your allies at the center, they are accusing these elections to be rigged. What do you make of that claim, and why is it that you haven't been able to satisfy them?
Well, it's not our job to satisfy. It's the Election Commission of Pakistan's job to satisfy all candidates and political parties who are participating. The government of Sindh is only responsible for policing and maintaining law and order, and that's the mandate that we had, and we did that mostly successfully. As far as allegations are concerned, it's a regular occurrence in the politics of Pakistan that whoever loses the election, especially so embarrassingly as they have this time round, they always level such allegations of rigging. If anybody has any proof, they should definitely go to the Election Commission of Pakistan, because as we've been seeing for the past few months, if not few years, that the Election Commission of Pakistan is taking complaints very seriously and effectively and efficiently, satisfying all complainants if there are any abnormalities.
Right. Let me also go to Mr. Musarrat Kadeem and talk to him with regards to, of course, what is happening in terms of the local body elections. And then, of course, the allegations that we were just talking about, how serious you think these allegations are. And then when we talk about the impact it's going to have on the election results and the credibility of those elections, then I want to understand what exactly do these incidents mean to you, and whether or not those incidents represent something which could have been prevented, and which, of course, is something that is not part of the process that happens, but could have been dealt with earlier. Is that so?
Yes, Sana, I am Musarrat. It's not Mr. I'm
My
Musarrat
apologies.
Kadeem. Yeah. So, first of all, I think it's really heartening to see that Sindh started the local government election process. So I think, first of all, we really need to welcome that. Although there has been, a lot of the authority and the power of local government has been reduced, but at least the election took place, and I think the voters participated in the process. As far as the election, I would say the violence is concerned, since it was it took place in 14 districts who are homogeneous, very homogeneous districts of Sindh. That means we can expect tolerant attitude from everyone, because they belong to the same ethnic group, at least in that part of Sindh. I'm trying to actually recall the question that you put. As far as this is concerned, when you look at the scale of the, because it's 14 districts, so the scale of violence, since we have not yet analyzed, tomorrow I think FAFN will come up, TDF FAFN will come up with its report for the local government election and the 14 districts. But so far as the 248 polling stations that we observed, we can rightly say that the scale of violence has not been that much as it is being portrayed. That I can say.
And that is very heartening, Musarrat Sahiba. But let me ask you about another very important aspect. In the past, Sarwar Bari Saab and others, your colleagues from your organization, have been appearing in this program and have been telling us about how the elections conduct, especially when it came to banners, when it came to the placement of polling booths, they were sufficient or not, were the rules observed or not. I understand that you have told us that day after tomorrow we should expect your report. But can you tell us some preliminary, observations regarding overall conduct of the elections? Do you think it was fair and free?
I'm not, because I cannot say anything at the moment unless and until I have the results in my hand. On the analysis and the report in my hand. But so far, apparently it seems that election took place. Somewhere, there was a law and order situation, because 4 of our observers were not allowed to observe the election. That means, and it puts a question mark on the electoral process itself, the voting itself in those 12 polling stations. Secondly, in 4 areas where our observers were there, they observed a law and order situation. And I think in the and in some of the polling stations.
All right, Ms. Musarrat Kadeem, I'll have to stop you there. We'll just take a short break and we'll be right back, and we'll continue the discussion. Hello and welcome back to the debate. We're talking about the local parties elections in Sindh. And Faisal, I believe you had a question.
Yeah, I had a question for my friend Nadir Gabol. I was looking at the trends within Sindh. Of course, previously everyone was claiming that there might be a different sort of result this time in the local body elections, but People's Party has gained the momentum once again in Sindh province. I just wanted to ask him, this momentum, would it be seen in rest of the country as well? And if so, then what is actually People's Party doing to make it happen?
Well, what People's Party has been doing for the past several years is performing. Even today, as you know, we started the intra-district bus service, and people of Sindh are very happy about that. 2 weeks ago, I was at the inauguration ceremony of the Sindh ambulance 1122 service, and the other infrastructure development that we have done in Sindh has ensured that the people of Sindh are extremely satisfied by our performance, and the couple of districts in Sindh which did try out maybe PTA or GDA in the past, even they are coming back towards People's Party because they realize that no other party other than People's Party feels for the people of Sindh, is connected to the people of Sindh, and always is ready to serve the people of Sindh. And hopefully we're expecting very good results from South Punjab as well as some parts of central Punjab, where our leaders such as Qamar Zaman Kaira, Raja Parvez Ashraf, and some other leaders are very active and connected with the people on ground. We hope to continue this momentum into the general elections as well. As you know, it could be next year or earlier. Nobody knows at this time, but that's what our main focus is. Hopefully, when the time for the general elections come, we will perform extremely well, not only in Sindh, but all over Pakistan, including Punjab, but not only that, but as well Balochistan as well, because in Balochistan recently we've gained tremendous momentum when a lot of powerful leaders from Balochistan joined our party. Sorry, I wanted to add that the next target right now is the local body elections in Karachi and the other districts of Sindh. As you know, this was one of the elections in 14 districts, and there's still a dozen districts left. In Karachi, we're very hopeful for a good outcome because our administrator, Murtaza Wahab, for the past year and a half has been performing really well. All over Karachi, we've gained a lot of momentum in terms of support from the public. Public has seen that when People's Party is both in government in the province as well as in the local government administration, then results happen. What people of Karachi had seen in the past was purely blame games when MQM was in power, and all they did was complain about lack of availability of funds and authority. And the same administrator has now proven that there is no shortage of funds, but there was always a shortage of willpower. And
right, Gabal sir, sorry to cut you, but when you were asked to comment on the potential of your party to win elsewhere in the country, particularly you chose to talk about southern Punjab, and then you mentioned certain or a few leaders of People's Party who might be in contact with the people. Do you think that elsewhere you don't have the kind of candidates that match the caliber of Qamar Zaman Kaira Sahab or someone else of that sort? That's why you are losing in Punjab so far?
No, it's not about candidates. It's about performance. I named Qamar Zaman Kaira and Raja Parvez Ashraf because I personally know them. They're very hardworking political workers, and they have great control over their area, and they've been performing really well in the past and currently as well. I'm not very familiar with Punjab, but I only know a few other names, such as, for example, Mr. Hassan Murtaza, Mr. Nadeem Afzal Chand, who recently came back, Wadait Saab. So we do have strongholds in Punjab as well. Lahore was once very pro-People's Party, but recently you've seen People's PMLN and PTI performing really well.
Lahore was where your party actually started its journey. It was the birthplace of your party.
Yes.
Right. We'll just quickly
Miss-
go to Ms. Masarrat, and you can add to the question as well, Faisal, but it's going to be the last one since we're almost out of time for this segment. I wanted to talk about the general elections, whenever they may be, with regards to how is it that whenever we talk about these elections, of course, there's also this demand and need and this claimed exercise of actually going towards free and fair elections and to exercise measures which are needed to do so. But really, in terms of the kinds of elections we've had in the past and the kind of local bodies elections we've seen just recently and are going to be seeing as well, how do you feel in terms of the general elections also looming in, how prepared or how ready or how responsible our current scenario is in terms of dealing with free and fair elections, perhaps particularly also the ECP and our capability to conduct these elections?
And I had the exactly same question.
Great.
But I'm going to add to this regarding law and order situation as well. It has been a bone of contention, ma'am, in the past as well. Many parties, when they lose, they blame the law enforcement agencies or their presence. But without that, we see more violence. So what is the solution?
Okay, so I'll just give you the answer to the last question first. Actually, the solution to violence is, it all depends on how our political culture is shaping up. It has become very violent. And I think we request the political leadership, because when political leadership itself talks in such a vehement and violent way, definitely it is transmitted to the voters and to his or her followers as well in the political party. I think our overall political culture has become very intolerant and unaccommodative. So we really need to start working on it. How to make it more tolerant and pluralistic. That's, I think, should be the goal of everyone who really wants, in Pakistan, free, fair, and I think peaceful elections. For that, both Election Commission of Pakistan, the relevant departments, and of course the civil society, media, everybody has to work to develop that sort of a culture where people can start working together and tolerate each other, and I think be active citizens but with a positive attitude. This is one, I think this is the answer to the last question. As far as the preparation for general elections are concerned, I think ECP has been doing very well. I think they had performed so well over the last, a decade and a half, that we really need to appreciate that. But then, at the same time, it's not only the job of ECP to carry out the elections in a free and fair election manner. Definitely, they have the huge responsibility to handle it. But at the same time, we all have to play our role in it. So, when it comes to violence, we only give it to law and order, to the law enforcement agencies. But what about the political parties? What about the media?
Right.
Who build up the perception? Because it's
Absolutely,
a game of
absolutely.
perception. You need to work on the perception, and that perception should be positive. That's
Right,
what
thank
we
you
really
very
need to
much.
work
Thank
on.
you very much, Chairperson Fafin, Ms. Masarrat Kadeem, for joining us and being a part of the show today. We're now going to moving on to our second segment, which is with reference to Russia and the Ukrainian conflict, and of course the kind of impact it's having and it's going to have on the economy, and then of course the food security as well. These are for the challenges that are being faced by developing countries such as ours in the aftermath of this conflict, and we are of course very hopeful to be able to see a resolution. But how soon can that actually come, and what is going to be the evolving situation like? We're going to try and figure out, because of course in light of the recent attacks in Kiev, it does not seem that we're going to move any closer to that anytime soon. We have with us for this Mr. Vladislav Gurevich, an expert on Central Eastern European countries. Thank you very much for joining us online. I hope I took your name correctly. And also Dr. Noel Coker, Ambassador of Pakistan to Ukraine. Thank you very much for joining us in the debate. I'll start with you, first of all, Dr. Noel. When we look at the kind of reports that are coming in, of course, the situation seems quite dire on ground. And just recently, we also know that there have been attacks in Kiev as well, in which at least one person and 6 others have been wounded. And there has been a 7-year-old girl as well who has been rescued from underneath the rubble. Can you give us perhaps a better idea of the situation as it is now in Kiev and generally in Ukraine as well since the Russian invasion took place?
The attack on Kiev came after 4th of April, And it has happened at a time when there's a G7 summit going on, and it's kind of a messaging from Russia onto G7 that what it expects from G7 in this war that it is prosecuting in Ukraine. But more than that was the President Zelensky's statement in his address to the G7 leaders, in which he said that he will like this war to end by winter. So that is very setting a timeline, which is very important to be seen and analyzed as such. And in this timeline, what can be achieved, what Ukraine can achieve. And I think what he is saying that please give me the weapons and bring about sanctions so that I can win this war for Ukraine and for you. Whether he is able to do that or not, it is a question which is time will tell. But for the moment, in the eastern regions of Ukraine, you have seen day before yesterday, there were reports on Russian forces gaining momentum, having taken Severodonetsk, for looking to cross over the river, and then also trying to encircle the enclave as it is to take on the city of Lysychansk. So they have a momentum at this point in time. And out of the Donbas region, what they have secured is about 90-95% or almost of the Luhansk sub-region, Donbas. But Donetsk itself is not yet been completely taken over. Most of the Donetsk oblast rests with Ukraine. And I think what Ukraine is also looking at is to create in the next coming months a favorable situation on ground on which they can go on to a negotiation table once again.
Yeah. Vladislav, if we talk about obviously the aim of Russia, it is being said that the Russian aim is to stop an access of Ukraine to the Black Sea. And of course, if we talk about Donbas, as Dr. Noel has pointed out as well, the Donetsk and obviously Donbas area, it is being fought for, and of course momentum of Russian forces there, it is very good. And when it comes to obviously Mariupol and Odessa, I'm just concerned, is it part of the plan as well that Odessa and Mariupol, of course, they join in that arc of with Russia to block the ways of Ukraine into the Black Sea? Is it sort of plan of Russia to block the way so that no trade can be done? And if so, then of course Ukraine has to talk to Russia in future to do or conduct that trade with other countries?
And could you also speak to the extent of this conflict? Do you think that if once Donbas is within its control and they have the land bridge to Crimea as well, they are going to actually stop there, or they are going to continue this war?
Well, thank you for inviting me. Yes, I think that from strategic point of view, Russia really wants to block for Ukraine the access to the Black Sea, but we should take into account the real reason of this war. Not Russia started this war. This war was started by Ukraine in 2014. Why do I say so? I say so because I have spent 37 years of my life in Ukraine, more than half of my life in Ukraine, and I saw with my own eyes this neo-Nazi ideology ruled by the Ukrainian society and imposed on the Ukrainian society by the Kiev authorities. The Ukraine is now, as we say, a terrain from which the Western countries make military pressure on Russia. Of course, Russia wants to secure its position, and Moscow many times told to its Russian partners not move closer to Russian borders, not move closer to Russian sea borders with NATO military. Ukraine is a puppet state, let's say frankly. It's absolutely dependent on the West, because in 2014, a legitimate Ukrainian president, Viktor Yanukovych, was overthrown with the support of the Western countries. He was overthrown by some Ukrainian politicians of ultra-nationalistic views. ultra-nationalistic attitude.
Vladislav, just a point of explanation. You said that you have seen with your own eyes the neo-Nazi policies of the local militias. Are you actually referring to Azov Brigade, or you are saying that the rest of Kiev administration is also hand in glove with such elements?
Yeah, I tell you, I didn't say about Azov. When, for example, I was a student in the Ukrainian Pedagogical University, we were taught in the history lessons that the Ukrainians who fought along with Nazi Hitler, they were good. The Red Army who fought against the Nazis, they were bad. The veterans of Nazi troops, of Ukrainian Nazi troops, are now equal in their rights with the anti-fascist veterans. Many monuments dedicated to the Ukrainians who fell in action fighting the Nazis, these monuments are toppled, they are ruined. But we have new monuments. We have new monuments dedicated to those Ukrainians who were pro-Nazis.
Right, but the problem with this assertion is that President Zelensky himself is Jewish. So how do you actually, square this circle and say that this there's a possibility that he might be actually heading a Nazi administration?
The Zelensky Jewish identity may be not so strong as we may think. He may be just assimilated Jew. So when politics comes into playing, and it could be more profitable for him from political point of view to support the ultra-nationalistic Ukrainian movement than to try to be a Jew.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Noel, if we talk about you, obviously you're someone who has served Pakistan military as well, and of course in the artillery. And if we talk about Russia, obviously Russia is considered as loaded with the artillery firepower, and you being someone who was a general in Pakistan military of the artillery, what do you think, what stopped Russia, and so that they have been extending this war for so long, knowing the facts that they have the firepower which they haven't been using, I guess?
I think you can take the complete perspective in view. Russia started with a blitzkrieg to capture Kiev and install a puppet government over here, and then later on bring entire Ukraine under its heels. It started on 24th February. Within a month, it realized that it has failed in doing so. The people of the Kiev city and Ukraine itself all together stood up with its armed forces against the Russian invasion, and that is why Russia had to pull back from proximity of Kiev and then reorient itself towards the defined objective of capturing Donbas, creating a land bridge with Crimea. So that is what is the ground reality that has happened up till now. But if you look at in the past 2 months and at the history also, as it was referred, in 2014, 1/3 of Donbas region fell under the Russian influence. So what was remaining was only 2/3 of the Donbas region, which was under Ukrainian control on the start of 24th February. And Luhansk and Donetsk. So if you look at Luhansk, which is Russia has taken more than a month to capture Severodonetsk, and that too after extensive use of artillery. And the statements which have come out, and they say that Russia is firing 10 to 15,000 rounds per day, whereas Ukraine is constrained with only 4,000 to 5,000 rounds that they can fire in back. So Russian forces are using extensively. It is more of an artillery duel. It is more of a slog. It is more of a ramification than a war itself to push yourself into the territory.
Right, Mr. Vladislav, when we look at this particular conflict, and of course we can understand the what and who's in it as well, but I want to also talk about the impact that it's having not just on the people of Ukraine and Russia, but then of course the people elsewhere around the world as well. And there are serious damages that are happening in terms of food crisis or energy issues, and that is of course something that is important to the people all over the world and within Ukraine and Russia as well. When we talk about these consequences of this conflict, then isn't it the responsibility of the people involved in this conflict as well to be able to move towards its resolution as well? Earlier, Farrukh asked you what the culmination point would be, but I want to understand how Russia is viewing the entire situation and whether or not there is any possibility of resolution even in their minds, or is that even one of the ends that's there, because it doesn't seem to be.
Any kind of timeline that you can give us when this might end?
Well, I think no one could forecast when the war ends, and neither do I.
And how could it end? Could you give us a scenario where you think that'll be the end?
Well, I know that from strategic point of view, the Western countries, especially the United States, will use any meter of Ukrainian territory against Russia if this territory will be under the Western control. And here Russia encounters with the problem what to do, whether to stop or whether to try to take off the Ukraine. And we should understand that the Russians and Ukrainians, they are one and the same folk. Let me remind you that before 1917, the Ukrainians themselves were called Russians, and the Ukrainians themselves were called Russians. We are one and the same folk. That is, this point is very difficult for Russia and very difficult for Ukraine, I mean the war. As for the impact of this war, yes, of course, it has back the impact on crisis, on energy, or on logistics. But let's think. Russia openly says many times that it's open and it's ready to cooperate with the international bodies about grain export or gas supplies. But Ukraine says we will not talk with Russia about grains, we will not talk with Russia about gas. Why? Because if Ukraine starts to talk with Russia about these issues, it will mean the Ukraine is understanding its position as weak and is pressed to talk to Russia. That is why Kyiv tries to be stubborn.
Yeah, Dr. Noel, sir, if we obviously talk about you, you have been in Ukraine for I think more than 2 years now, and I'm pretty much sure that you are well aware of the exports of Ukraine that it was making to its Eurasian countries.
And to the UN.
Yeah, to the UN as well. Looking at the ground realities, of course, one can, simply suggest that Odessa, Mariupol and Donbass, if it goes with Russia, then here we have Ukraine blocked to Black Sea, and Black Sea was playing a key role in terms of Ukrainian exports. I mean, Pakistan even imported grain from them. So can we say that it would be sort of a huge hit to economy of Ukraine when the dust settles?
And Ambassador Cook, once you are done answering this question, I was wondering, as a professional soldier, accomplished soldier, and a strategist, if you could shed some light on the possibility of how long this conflict may get dragged on, and is there a possibility, some revolving door through which there is a possibility that finally some conclusion may appear soon?
Thank you very much. I think, first of all, it's important to reiterate Pakistan's position that it wants ceasefire to be implemented immediately, and also to that all the issues should be brought to negotiation table and discussed over there, and the war should end. And that remains our position. But talking beyond the position, in terms of the global ramifications, you see that the war itself, although it is between Ukraine and Russia, it has created global ramifications, effects in terms of crisis, in terms of food supply, in fuel. There is a talk of recession. The commodity prices are going up. So there are secondary and tertiary effects going up. So they are not going up because of this war, and everybody would like this war, along with Pakistan, to end soon. Now, in terms of ground realities, there is no negotiations going on at this point in time, which means that both sides are looking at a favorable ground situation, after which they can start the negotiations. Ukraine, I read from and interpret from the statements that they come, They have given them 2 months or so before they return to the talking table. And their objectives, of course, would be to retake Kherson, cut the land route once again, lift the siege of Odessa so that, not the siege, the blockade of Odessa, so that the supply of grains and commodities can continue. Ukraine had not completely shipped its previous year's commodities, grain and corn oil and etc. from its ports, and the new crop will be coming in few months' times again, and they need places where they can put them and again feed the world as they have been doing in the past. So it is in terms of global ramification, it is a war which is creating ripples and effects all over the world, and that is something which has to be seen over here. Odessa itself has been blockaded. There have been talks going on the sidelines, and Turkey has been leading these talks with Russia so as to open the blockade of Odessa so as to supply essential grains and essential items out of Ukraine. I think there's a need to support Turkish efforts over here so that the issues of commodities and issues of grain supply and food crisis and hunger crisis can be addressed at priority while the war goes on. I said at the start that looks like that President Zelensky wants the war to end by winter, which in any case the campaigning season would end, and then you will have to look at different ways to continue even if you want to continue. But before that, what he's signaling to G7 leaders is that I've given you a timeline. Support me with weapons which I need to retake, which means that they are offensive weapons, tanks, artillery, air defense, and other things. And he is also asking them to support him furthermore on the sanctions on Russia so as to bring the war to an early closure.
Right. Ambassador Khogha, you mentioned the support that Turkey is, of course, offering in terms of its assistance. It also offered its role in terms of a mediator and to try and facilitate the dialogue. In terms of mediation being a possible aspect of resolution towards this conflict, do you really think there can be a country or any party or platform that can actually play a role of mediator, and whether or not mediation can actually be successful in this conflict?
See, irrespective of the ground outcomes, all wars end in a mediation and through mediation, and I think that is what Turkey is also looking. Turkey is a country which is an important player in the region. It controls the access in and out of the Black Sea, and as a voice over here, as a to say, and it's a powerful voice. It has made an effort in the past where he brought the two parties to a negotiating table. There were some good outcomes over there. Some notes were exchanged with respect to the future of Crimea and other issues. That got stalled, and I think there's a need to restart, and Turkey need to be supported over here so that they can put an effort to restart the negotiations.
Right. Vladislav, earlier Ambassador Sahab was actually talking about lack of any direct negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. But the question now, day before yesterday, we know that the Russian ambassador to the United States was meeting and lobbying Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad in Washington. Is there a possibility that there might be some attempt to create some kind of off-ramp? And by the way, I just noticed something on your neck. Is it a tattoo? And what does it stand for?
Well, I think, yes, they may prepare something for some platform for negotiations, and Kiev will agree to negotiate if Washington will agree to negotiate. Ukraine is a puppet state. The president of Ukraine is a puppet person, unfortunately. So Ukraine cannot provide sovereign foreign policy. That is why everything depends on Washington.
Right.
Vladislav, talking about the negotiations, let's suppose there is, everything is reaching to a point where we can have some kind of negotiations. And on the negotiations, of course, there is a proposal from the Ukrainian side that, of course, as Dr. Noel has pointed out, that obviously Odessa is blockaded as well, and Mariupol as well. And can we say that Ukraine might come up with a solution to it, and Ukraine says that we want a permanent corridor that opens to Black Sea so that our exports and so that our economy is not affected in future? Would it be given by Russia in coming future?
No, I don't think it will be given to Ukraine by Russia if Russia will be able to do so. Because let me remind that Odessa, Mariupol, all these roads to the Black Sea, they were the part of Russia, and they were given to Ukrainian Republic by the communist authorities. It was the part of Russia given to Ukraine because Ukraine was an agricultural country inside the Soviet Union. And of course, now Russia wants to prevent the situation when the Ukrainian access to the seas could be used by NATO to attack Russia.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Branislav, for joining us and being a part of the debate, and Dr. Noel Coker for being a part of the debate and taking the time out. That's all we have from the debate for now. We, of course, hope that this conflict actually resolves soon and we're able to see the suffering of the people and sooner rather than later, and that actually people doing something about it. That's all for now. See you tomorrow.